Okay, guys. I'm just going to give an update on the off the map gold, which still I'm not overly impressed with, but just something I put out there last week. What was it, June the 26th? Just for those not familiar with it, it was just I was just thinking about how much time and effort it was taking, whilst a few other things going on in my life, and it's just going to sort of attach a small charge to getting all the documentation that I sort of prepare prior to a meeting. But so I just want to give an update on how that's all progressing. So one thing I just will touch on to begin with was that, even though I virtually, when I wrote this, I didn't share it or publicise it very much at all, I've just actually been overwhelmed by the response. Actually, gobsmack's probably a better word. You just, how many are actually, I for one sort of always been very averse to paying for any betting tips, and just amazes me how many out there would be willing to pay even just a small fee for what I put out there. And that's probably one of the major reasons I didn't actually share it at the time. I wanted to keep it on the small side as well. Plus, I wanted to really want people to sign up because they were familiar with the product and sort of had confidence in it, were willing to pay for it. Much prefer those type of subscribers than those who sign up just because I start spruiking some, bullshit figures and pumping up my own tyres. And so look after those who have been loyal over the time. So, but that sort of big response in itself also to get me thinking about, if I'm going forward with it, I really have to commit to it. So I've got, I thought there might have been like 8 or 10 sort of maximum, but given the response, it's something I really do need to commit to. Because at the moment, I've just got a feeling that I'm not overly happy with how the product's presented at the moment. So I just got to keep tinkering with that, and really do need to tweak a few things. And that's probably what I'll, do over the next couple of weeks. I said it's just, I'm not comfortable in how the end user, what they actually see. And, I want to say I'm not happy with the product. Obviously, the results are still being okay. Like we've got 155 units spent for 226.40 return. So over sort of 2 weeks of 171 units. POT, there's what, 71 divided by 155, so it's just under a half, so it'll be about 47%. So obviously those results, it'd be easy to sit back and say, wow, look at, rest on those, but when I look at it though, it's definitely, there are some cracks in the system. I haven't been actually happy with my tipping at all, even though those results, a lot of people would be sort of very happy with that, but obviously it's not a huge sample size either. So can't draw too much into them, and I'm only too familiar with the fact that you can see there's far too many blanks there for my liking. Usually one who's big on strike rate. And the other thing that I really want to maximise, that try and set this apart from, is try and make sure subscribers back horses at the right price. And that's the one thing I really need to drill in on, because that makes a huge difference to this bottom line. So over the next couple of weeks, you'll probably notice some weird and strange initiatives. So that's the other thing as well. And the other thing I'm going to be tinkering with is finding exactly the right betting system for it. What I use personally is just far too complicated to even try and put out there, let alone explain it. But I do think these type of things tend to work best, when you stick to you got the old KISS principle, keep it simple. As soon as people open it, they don't have to try and comprehend what's going on. It's all pretty user-friendly, and so just look for, you might notice a couple of little tweaks there, but it won't be too much different from what currently comes out there. Because the one thing about the betting system is that it really is the major thing that sets winning punters apart from the losers. I know heaps of good judges, and a lot of them actually lose just because they can't stake correctly. And conversely, I know some shockers of judges, but they actually win because they invest correctly. Like, it's almost more important to have a successful betting bet in a certain way as opposed to doing the form. And that's probably the one thing that you'll notice with most good tipping sites is they have a very definitive staking model, and that's great for average punters who just don't know how to invest. So and to be honest, if you've got a staking model that works and you put in the time, the required amount of form study, I mean by that, it's virtually impossible to lose. Sure, it's probably not as exciting as, when you have a punt on the prince or pauper type basis, you bet to your bankroll. you have 200 on them when you got $2,000, and you have $5 on them when you got 50. But obviously sounds boring, but still sort of a lot more exciting the next day when you wake up and you've got money in your bank account as opposed to having a shocker. So just obviously this is obviously drawn over years on the punt, just little things that have worked. But in this type of thing, I probably always draw back to the time I spent when I worked with Mark Reed up in Darwin in the late 90s. Obviously, you learned a ton about wagering because it was just virtually all the conversation was about prices, racing sports in general, and that type of thing. And there's probably one throwaway line that's always stuck with me from back then. It was sort of, I think it might have actually been Jared Toomey who said it, and it was along the lines of, any mug with a VCR and a stopwatch can pick a winner, but the majority of punters out there, the majority of punters do know how to actually pick the winner, but very, very few of them have got a clue in how to bet properly, and that's what bookmakers prey on. And to be honest, the more I sort of look back at that comment, it's probably the truest line ever spoken. Like, just personally, I'm no better judge than a lot of people out there. Sure, I probably do a lot more work into the meetings. Yeah, but there's still a lot of people's opinion out there that I value. And that's just, as I mentioned before, it's not just the winning punters, it's the losing punters. So don't, take all advice on board, ignore most of it, but store it away. But so probably about the only edge I have over, Joe Public, Joe Average out there is that time element that I put into the meetings. And as I mentioned before, there's also, I do have a few golden rules when it comes to the punt that I try to adhere to those rules, but most of the time anyway. yeah, so that sort of touches on sort of where I'm at. So going forwards, as I mentioned before, I'm not overly happy with what I'm putting out there at the moment, and even my tipping of late, I've been pretty disappointed in it, even though the results show differently. So it's, that wallpaper over the cracks type of thing, that there's things that I really need to fix up, because it's not at the level I want or expect, and so therefore just going to continue down the free path for a little while longer, at least until I'm happy with a product that I'd be comfortable to charge for. Make it something that I myself, I'm happy with that. I'd be willing to pay that amount for that. That's where I'm coming from. And as I mentioned in the other piece sort of here, I don't want to make a fortune from it either. Just a small amount for the time, and actually, given the interest in it, which, as I said, just gobsmacked me, I might just adjust the initial pricing down a little. So I'm at $10 a meeting. I might make it $10 a weekend probably. I'll sort of still play around with that anyway. Don't lock anything in there. But I'm also very adamant. I want to keep it on the small side. I want to keep control over it. Obviously, those people who initially responded will get first dibs. So, just given the number there, I probably won't take on any more until first one drops out, one comes in. So I've got more than I initially wanted, already interested. So, I was about to say anybody else can go on a waiting list. I thought, geez, that makes me sound like a right tosser. You can go on a waiting list to get Maddie's tips. Yeah. But the one thing I'm sort of probably struggling with the most with it is how to not ignore what was my initial target audience. Because, look, when I started it, my initial goal was because I was that annoyed and pissed off with how there was no effort being made to try and invigorate betting or even educate punters onto how good how good Tasmania was as a wagering option for everybody out there. And I just thought everybody in charge had really missed the mark in that regard. So without trying to make myself sound like the Robin Hood of Tasmanian wagering, I do think to some degree I've done that. But the reason that I've sort of come to this type of thing is that I still think I was doing a little bit half-assed, in that I was doing the bare minimum. I was providing more than the bare minimum, but I wasn't providing the full box and dice. So going forwards, I'll continue to virtually be business as normal for non-subscribers. There won't be too much difference to what you see in the content I put out there. But anybody who wants to pay, the small stipend, they'll just get probably the full prices and a bit of other stuff. And even if I, like something midweek and but this, I'm still a little bit uncomfortable with it, because just from a personal perspective, I've always been very anti any paid tipsters out there in my entire life, and I've never once subscribed to a tipping site, not once. And yet here I am, so do as I say, not as I do. But as I said, I do really only want to make it a small charge to make it accessible to as many as possible. If those numbers jump off, because it's the one thing that actually amazed me, because when you do this type of thing, you've got no idea how many people it's hitting home with. You don't know if there's 5 people following you, 20, 50, 200. So yeah, so it's just sort of gobsmackingly amazing the sort of feedback I got. So so it's just sort of, that sort of stuff probably means more than any financial benefit. It's easy to say that, but as I said, there's also, but I do think there's a time element sort of involved. I sort of don't want to make a fortune, so, but we're definitely not going to sting anybody. So just going forward, I'm actually away all this week, so I'll probably be back Thursday night, Friday. So I'll probably be pretty quiet, but definitely be back prior to the weekend. So we'll touch base with everybody then. So anyway, guys, might wrap it up there. So until this weekend, we'll leave you with it. And thanks again.